welcome back to another episode of 6 and 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. We begin today in South America, where Colombians are facing a company whose behavior has some questioning whether or not their business practices are moral. From BBC, quote, Ecopetrol, which is 88% owned by the Colombian state and listed on the New York Stock Exchange, rejects the fisher's claims that it has been polluting the water. In response to BBC's questioning, it says it has an efficient wastewater treatment system and effective contingency plans for oil spills. The BBC filmed at one of the sites marked as only known by Ecopetrol, which was dated 2017 in the database. 7 years later, a thick black oily-looking substance with plastic containment barriers around it was visible along the edge of the section of the wetland. Ecopetrol's CEO from 2017 to 2023, Felipe Bayon, told the BBC he strongly denied suggestions that there were any policy that would withhold information about pollution. Next, we shift our focus to Africa, where Kenya is looking to a new agreement with their current deal with the IMF and trying to get future funds out of it. From Reuters, because there is a carryover, there is some money that will not be utilized in the 9th review. Then we agreed there's a possibility of a funding program, Madabi told Reuters. There was roughly $800 million left on the table from the program that had not been started in April 2021, he said. The whole program comprises $3.6 billion in an extended credit facility and extended fund faculty, and $541.3 million in a resilience and sustainability facility. Moving across the Atlantic to Guatemala, where the president attempted to issue an executive order mandating car insurance, but was met with large protest. From BBC, the government had issued a decree in the wake of a deadly bus accident last month in which more than 50 people died. Speaking at a news conference on Wednesday, the president said he had been elected to bring about necessary changes in the country, some of which would be difficult. Quote, I remain convinced that a new general transport system law is the right way forward for the well-being of our country, he said, adding that traffic accidents were the main cause of death in Guatemala. He said that after talks with representatives of the protesters, the two sides had agreed to set up a technical committee to come up with a plan on how to introduce compulsory insurance within a year. Next, across the Pacific in South Korea, the nation has been hit by a devastating series of wildfires, which has engulfed several areas throughout the country. From Reuters, deadly wildfires spread further across South Korea on Monday as authorities designated 3 more counties special disaster zones. A local farmer said, quote, things that remind me of my youth disappeared without a trace. Photos of my children when they were young, he told Reuters. The biggest priority is to quickly come up with measures to support and allow disaster recovery as soon as possible, he said. And, of course, we go south to our friends down in New Zealand, who are currently attempting to build a new trade relationship with their first bilateral trade talks with India in almost 10 years. From BBC, proximity to New Zealand is crucial to Delhi's interests, as India aims to counter China in the Indian Ocean region. Luxon, he is the current representative for the New Zealand delegation there, is reportedly being accompanied by one of the largest delegations the Prime Minister has ever traveled with, underscoring the importance of the visit. Trade negotiations between the two countries had initially begun in 2010, but stalled after several rounds over issues such as market access. New Zealand had sought greater access to India's dairy market, which India has traditionally protected to support its farmers. After years of skepticism over free trade, India has recently become more open to negotiating bilateral deals with other countries. And finally, we go to Europe, where the new German coalition in power is looking to spend big, a shift in policy that caused some voters to fear their choice last month. From Reuters, quote, an INSA poll published on Sunday showed 73% of all voters and 44% of CDU and CSU, the main coalition that's in power right now, supporters felt deceived. Support for the group fell 1 point to 27%, while the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD, gained 1 to 23. This left the margin between the two parties just 4 points, half of the gap 1 month ago when the election took place. The CUD and CSU has failed to deliver on its pre-election promises with the debt package, INSA head Herman Binkert told Bild. And of course, if you want to read any more into these, you want to hear about the coalition in Germany falling apart, possibly. You want to hear about how New Zealand's going to penetrate India's milk market. All of those things, you can find the links in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine. That's not just this episode that comes out on Tuesday and Thursday, but also the more US-focused ones that come out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We actually did our first new episode, new style, of like a little movie review, or a series review, in this case of Severance. So if you want to check that out, go to yesterday's video. It will be linked in the description. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.